everyone, and good whatever wonderful moment of the day you are enjoying on your time zones, either now as you watch or listen in live, or later on when you find the recording. We are having today an amazing conversation. I personally have been waiting for it ever since I saw it in the list of our October series. We will be talking about fostering effective collaboration and more explicitly about how kindness, compassion, and empathy can foster the best conditions for effective collaboration in an organization. My name is Minola Jacques. I will be your co-host for the next hour. We have Jessa taking care of us backstage. So if you do enjoy today's conversation, please make sure you say a big thank you for her amazing work. And we have one of the best lineups we could have dreamed of for this amazing topic. Jessa, if you can just help me bring them up on stage. In the meantime, I will keep welcoming everybody in the audience. Please do consider the comments and the chat as your own conversation space and drop us your comments. First and foremost, do let us know where you're connecting from. It's always a joy to see where Hacking HR makes a difference. And also, please do consider all the questions open to all of you. So drop your answers, drop your stories, drop your thoughts, engage with each other, engage with our panelists, and let's see where this conversation takes us. Now, this will be a very, very short hour, and it's been quite a gloomy week here in Switzerland. I was looking forward to having a bit of mind and heart sunshine. What we will do, we will start slowly, we will ease into the topic, and I will just need a bit of logistics help from people in the panel. When you're not speaking, if you can just mute yourselves, because otherwise we will get some echo and some sensitive mic inputs. Thank you so much. We will do today a little bit differently because it's pre-Friday. We will go counterclockwise, and it's easy. First, just shortly introduce yourselves. And then if you can share the first thing that pops in your mind that really profoundly impacted your understanding and your relationship with kindness, compassion, and empathy at work. It can be a situation, it can be someone, it can be anything. So what we will do, we will start with Bree and then work our way counterclockwise. And Bree, just give me a thumbs up if you're ready to go. Wonderful. It's so good to see you. Welcome.
So good to see you, Manola. I love being on panels with you. It's such a joy. So my name is Bree O'Malley, and I am the director of the Revision Energy Training Center. Since signing up for this panel, I started in a new job. So all details about me are new. And I think the thing that about work and kindness that impacted me the most was being on a team for the first time when everyone was working for each other instead of against each other, and the profound difference when everyone assumed best intent, and that ended up being the most successful, most productive team I was ever on, and became the model of how I wanted to be on teams and how I wanted to lead teams. So that adage that, happy people are the best employees, I was living it, and it's true.
Wonderful. And we are so happy that we get to celebrate your new beginning with this panel. So thank you for being here. Terry, good to see you.
Good to see you, Minola. Always a pleasure being on a panel with you. And hi to everyone on the panel and those that are joining us. My name is Terry Shiundu. I'm sitting in Nairobi, Kenya. I'm a Senior Director of People and Culture at Village Enterprise. One thing that struck me and why really I joined this panel is it's a topic close to my heart because I remember an instance where I had a very difficult situation. I faced a very difficult situation sometime back in 2017. And I couldn't explain to my boss what the situation was or my colleagues. But my supervisor then just told me, Terry, take a month off. Take a month of work. Just, settle it. And once you've settled it, let us know when you're ready to come back to work. And when I came back to work, I didn't get work piled up waiting for me. It was done. That was to me a great show of kindness and empathy, and really an extension of compassion. So that's why this topic, strikes me. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. Tracy, welcome.
Thank you. Nice to be with you all. And with you, Manola, always a highlight to be with you, especially talking about the topic of joy. It's wonderful. I'm Tracy Brower. I'm the Vice President of Workplace Insights for Steelcase, and I have my PhD in the sociology of work, how we affect our work, how it affects us. My most recent book is called The Secrets to Happiness at Work, and I write for Forbes and Fast Company and other publications as well. And I just adore this concept and this topic. And I think that when we give it more life and energy and visibility, it's such a great thing for individuals and teams as well as organizations. I was thinking about kindness and your question, Manola, and there are so many things, right? But one thing in particular, I was early in my career and I was working with an organization that was super toxic. And one of the leaders in particular was super toxic. And we had a regular, weekly meeting where we were doing this giant project for the organization. And there was a woman who was in a project management role, and the leader just was biting back at her and striking out at her really inappropriately, both from a factual standpoint and in terms of how he was going about it. And I stood up for her. And it was so empowering and wonderful. And when I stood up for her, others joined in and said, hey, wait a minute, so-and-so has gotten this done. And, we need to, respect, blah, blah, whatever. We went on with the meeting and talked about the more accurate facts about what she had provided to the team in terms of directing and guiding the project. And so it was empowering. It was really important because it had impact on the group. And it was really important for her to know that she wasn't kind of alone in this toxic situation. And so I think, we think about kindness a lot of times as soft or fluffy or just being sweet to people. And I think it can also be about advocating and powerfully supporting and really holding people accountable, in the case of holding this leader accountable for his behavior. And so I surely don't do it all the time well, but that was one example that felt really good and really important.
Thank you. And Olga, welcome. So great to have you here today.
Great, thank you. It is great to be here. It's a great topic. And if you ask me about one example, I think I saw such an effect reporting from one leader to another leader. If you think about Liz Wiseman's multiplier concept, that is kind of my aha moment, where I saw such a big effect if somebody is really supportive, really tries to get the best out of people and sees much more potential in situations, in people, and brings that out in a very positive way. That leader used a lot of smileys, a lot of fun, a lot of lightness, and it felt like, so much weight was off my shoulder, and that I could breathe, and that I could even fly, and that things would not, feel like they were a big effort. So it was such a big difference. And then you see that multiplier, that positive effect kind of spreading. More and more people feel confident, more and more people feel that they can trust each other. And you see the whole effect like, a big circle going in the organization. And it was wonderful to see. And that energy is still with me. And a bit of humor always helps as well.
Wonderful. And we all know about the amazing things that you do when you are not on Hacking HR panels. Could you share something with our audience? Just a short introduction.
Was that still for me or for the next one?
Yes, sure. it was still for you, because I loved how you jumped right into the story. And you left us with a bit of mystery, like, who is Olga?
Olga is a bit crazy. Olga is based in the Netherlands. I work for HP for about 25 years, and it seems like a long time, but it feels new. every day. So I love it. And I work in an international organization looking at the future of work together with people from a lot of different cross-functional teams. So an interesting topic and very good to do that collaboratively across the whole organization.
Thank you so very much. And Melissa, welcome. This panel is just great. It gets better with every speaker. It's good to have you.
Thank you so much. And I so appreciate the opportunity to be here with all of you. My background is in leadership, learning, and organizational development, primarily with ed tech firms and financial services firms. And in the 25 years that I've been practicing in this space, the thing that I have found most elusive is providing the right support to the right managers at the right time. And so I've created a personalized approach. And last year I left corporate life and launched my own practice so that I could focus on helping those new managers in critical roles really learn how to engage their teams and deliver better results. And clearly, kindness is such a key element in all of that. And so to your question, Manola, first of all, let me just call out that the moment of kindness happened on the call right here, whereas you understood this is my first time out, this is my first panel. So Manola craftily said, we're going counterclockwise. That was an act of kindness right here live. And so that was very meaningful and impactful. And I so appreciate that opportunity to be last as you open up. I think where kindness became really palpable to me in my work was reading engagement surveys. I ran engagement surveys for many years, and I was privy to reading the thousands of comments. And one of the threads that you could pull in the comments about good experience, good employee experiences, were all about kindness that had been shown to them by their leaders, by leaders in the organization, by their direct managers, by their peers even. And very often when you read the negative comments and the ones that are filled with a little bit of tension or, agita, it's that kindness was missing. Someone didn't give them the benefit of the doubt, didn't take the time to really ask questions to understand what their perspective was, what the effort was that they had put into things, and had jumped to conclusions that were impacting them adversely. And so kindness is a core concept that is so important to getting the kind of effort you want from people and the productivity that you're looking for. It's integral to psychological safety. And so as that concept becomes so important and happily so, we need to understand that without kindness, empathy, and compassion, psychological safety cannot exist.
Well, this conversation will definitely take us places and wide and deep. I just want to make sure that everybody is comfortable knowing that this conversation is being recorded. So don't worry in case something happens or you want to go back to it and refer it to friends and colleagues, you will be able to do so. Now, before we jump into the topic directly, let's spend a little bit more time looking at kindness, compassion, and empathy. Sometimes we tend to use them interchangeably. So I am really curious to understand whether these overlap completely, what is specific to each of these values and principles. And then I'm really curious to understand whether they show up differently in the workplace from how we embody them in our personal lives. And what I will do, I will not prompt any of you to be pioneers for this one, but let's practice the unmuting competition and see how we go from here. Tick tock, tick tock. Who wants to go first?
I can step into the pool. Happy to do that. So as we think about kindness and compassion and empathy, sometimes we have this whole debate about, well, what's sympathy and what's empathy and what's compassion? And there's a value judgment associated with all of those. And, we can think about sympathy is, is when you've had the same experience, and so therefore you can share the same kinds of emotions. Empathy is you can imagine what somebody is thinking or imagine what they're feeling, and be respectful of those emotions, but not necessarily share those emotions, right? And then compassion is often about taking action. Like, I see what you're going through, I respect what you're going through, I can appreciate what that's like, and I'm going to take action as a result. And the thing that I think we lose when we do value judgments and lots of effort around defining terms is sometimes I think the actions get lost in the definitions. And so for me, the bottom line is really about trying to really think about what somebody else is going through, and cognitive and emotional empathy, right? Imagining what they might be feeling, emotional empathy, imagining what they might be thinking, cognitive empathy. But we really are able to provide the best support when we don't necessarily enter the emotions with them. Like, you think about having empathy for a child, right? Like, they're frustrated because, I don't know, maybe a sibling has taken a toy or something, right? Like, you don't necessarily have to enter the emotion of frustration or agitation in order to support and be caring toward them. And I think we can take that approach with each other as well. Like, we can be kind, we can take action toward respecting and supporting. And when we resist entering the emotion along with people, that's an act of self-care, and we actually retain more energy so that we can support others. And that's especially true when we do trauma-oriented work or work in the field, which might put us into situations with people who need a lot of support on a minute-to-minute, day-to-day, week-to-week basis. And the last thing I would say is I think that there's a real action component. Like, we can imagine, we can think, we can feel toward people. But when we really roll up our sleeves, when we stop and listen, when we ask questions, when we offer resources, we don't have to be professional social workers, but when we do those kinds of things, that has a huge impact on people feeling seen, people feeling respected, people feeling like their circumstance and their situation matter and are being seen by others.
Thank you. Bree, I saw you looking for the unmute. Would you like to go next?
You did. So one thing I think that Tracy, as you were saying, really stuck out for me is that the act of clearing a path, especially in the workplace where you may want to let people, challenge by choice, people share as much as or as little as they want, but just getting to the point that you can help someone clear a path forward through something that is stopping them, and giving multiple options of like what might feel good, what might get us forward. Sometimes clearing the path is doing what Terry described when she introduced herself, is giving someone space to heal and do what they need to do. Sometimes it's just, scaffolding work to help somebody. But I think that those acts of path clearing as a leader and as a colleague are really powerful in sort of moments of kindness and living empathy.
Just to add on what has been said, I love how Tracy has described, the 3 words, just to break them down. And just to add on what, including what Bree has said, there's this quote by Maya Angelou that I love sharing on LinkedIn sometimes, that I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but they will never forget how you made them feel. And I think that is very much aligned to our topic today, that you, as a leader, we can try, we can really try and show that empathy and, compassion, but it can't be faked, It's not something you can do, like you can't fake it. It has to really come from within, that, showing that care, that extension of compassion, that going beyond just saying, I feel you, I understand what you're going through, but taking action to supporting the compassionate bit and actually helping their person or the staff or the employee actually take action on what is going on. Like in my case, I was given the break. I was able to, recover and then come back very fresh and alert and able to do my work. So it goes beyond just talking about it, because it's easy to discuss it and talk about it as a nice thing in the workplace. But do we as leaders actually practice it? And I think that's where the difficulty is. And I'm glad we are having this conversation. Thank you.
I agree. I love all of these comments and teasing out the distinctions between these three terms. I think they overlap and they become very muddy. And I think, Tracy, to your point, it makes sense not to get caught up necessarily in the definitions, but in the actions. Manola, you asked a second part of that question, which really took me aback for a second, asking about the difference between the workplace and outside of work, and if there's a distinction in kindness in those two realms. I think I might have answered it differently pre-pandemic, right? But now that boundary between work and home that was so in place, as managers, there were things we could discuss and things we couldn't discuss, and people you'd never let your child on camera. And now it's like, hey, are your kids around? Because we're kind of bored. So that boundary has been broken. And I think with it, a greater acceptance of kinds of behaviors. Certainly, the ways you can express kindness to an employee can be much more personal than it ever was, because you do have insights into their lives and the challenges that they face every day. And if you're a manager or a colleague who wants to do something kind for someone else at work, you have more information about them as a whole person to express kindness and compassion and empathy in the process.
Yeah, I love that example indeed of COVID, because before indeed you never asked about a partner, etc. But now you had to, like, hey, is your partner okay? Can he or she work from home? What is doing? And indeed, noises of dogs or kids were very unprofessional, and now it's kind of part of life. So I think that was indeed a very good example of how kindness in the workspace maybe has differed. I'm not so, with the words, I can theoretically understand it, but I think for me, all words are really like, I see you, I hear you, I care about you, and I want the best for you. And I think those are important, because also after COVID, I think people have been more involved in the workplace as well in discussions about sensitive topics. I think there were more polarized topics, more polarized ideas that now are discussed than before they were really, stayed in personal life. And I think there it's also so important to hear people, to see them, to care about them, because it's so easy in a polarized discussion to say you are wrong and not listening, but not even putting yourself in somebody else's shoes, but really being curious, like what is the motivation, and not shutting somebody down and not pushing them in a corner, but really say, hey, I hear your passion, or I see that you're upset, and really try, even if you don't agree with the topic, but try to understand. So I think in extreme situations where we are in now, try to hold your judgment and really be curious about the motivation of the others, and try to show that you care, I think is what we probably need to do a little bit more, instead of trying to fix others or judge situations.
This is wonderful. And I was listening to your answers, and I hear a lot of behaviors. I hear a lot of how we speak with each other. So I would really encourage you all, and especially people in the audience. I can only imagine how many nuances these will get across cultures, genders, generations, and so many other intersectionalities. So please do drop in your comments how you experience kindness, empathy, and compassion as a giver and also as a receiver. That would be absolutely wonderful. Now, I was so happy to hear that we mentioned very early on qualitative outputs from surveys and any type of conversations across the organization. And I think that the magic thing to do with kindness, empathy, and compassion is to really, as frustrating as it is in this day and age, to link it to a business case and to speak about them in the language of business. So I am really interested when we want to build the case for kindness, empathy, and compassion. And I want to acknowledge the extra challenge of authentic kindness, empathy, and compassion because you see the value of it. Are there any kind of allies in terms of data and analytics? I'm still under the influence of the People Analytics Summit that we can use to promote this. And let's go, Terry, and then we move from there.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think when we look at the analytics side of it and building a case for it, one thing that I think stands out for me is the attrition rate in a workplace. Why are employees leaving? What's the rate? What's the attrition rate? What's the retention rate? Why are they leaving? Are we finding out why they are leaving? Is it, and you know, it is said that people leave managers and not really the organization. And so if people are leaving, especially in a particular department or, you know, in a certain unit, it's important to find out why is this happening in this particular unit? How is the manager? How is the management? Because as I said, it's easier said than done. We can talk about care and empathy, you know, building that psychological safety, but are we actually practicing? Are we authentic as leaders? How do we show up? How do we extend that kindness to the employees in the office? And so also look at, I like to look at feedback on websites like Glassdoor. You know, there's a lot of feedback of different workplaces, and it really gives you information of how a certain environment is even before you jump in. What do the employees say? When you do employer net promoter score, that is something we have done at Village Enterprise just to gauge, can you recommend Village Enterprise as an employer of choice to your friends and family? And so these are metrics that would really give you an idea of how the environment is, because especially when it's anonymous and employees know that, you know, this survey is anonymous, they can actually really give good feedback that will help you know the kind of workplace or environment that we have as an organization. Just to name a few. Thank you.
Are we going around, Manola?
We're going wherever this conversation takes us. So please tell us.
Right. Sounds good. Well, I'm already talking, so I'll keep going. I love this question. I think it's so cool because I think the pushback is, well, this feels pretty fluffy, and you know, could we just get down to business, right? Do the things that really matter. And I actually did an article for Forbes on empathy and the business case and the data that supports why empathy is so important, and compassion and kindness. You could Google empathy Brower Forbes and find it pretty easily. We're up to, I think, about 3 million views on that particular article, which makes me so excited. Like we're having this conversation globally, which is really cool. But there are a number of different studies that have been done on the effects of empathy from a number of different sources, most of which were global and all both valid and reliable. And the findings are that when people experience empathy in their work environment, they tend to be more innovative. They tend to have greater retention. Terry, to your point, they tend to have a better perception of work-life fulfillment. They tend to perform better. They tend to be more motivated. They tend to be more engaged. It's like this incredible panacea. And you sort of look at the data and say, could it really be that good? But then there are multiple sources of that data. The other part of that logic train is I've also done a lot of research on the business benefits of happiness. And you could Google business benefits happiness Brower Forbes and find all of that data if you want to reference it. But when people are happier, we tend to be retained. We tend to perform better. We tend to have better physical health. And all of those things ladder to teams that perform better, to actually organizations that can get better results. And so I think it's really important that we see that this is like really impactful and really worth it, not just because it happens to be good for people, but because there are lots of other kinds of benefits as well. The one thing I think, I love the point you were making, Terry, both a minute ago and most recently, about the importance of authenticity. I haven't written the article yet, but I found some research I have to write about that when it's not authentic, it's actually worse than nothing at all. Like you're better if you can't be authentic in expressing your compassion, kindness, or empathy, you're probably better not even to go there, right? Because that actually erodes trust and erodes respect and erodes a sense of people feeling like they're being seen and heard. And so that authenticity is a big deal. And I think we need to give each other grace, right? Like none of us are going to do this perfectly. And I love your point, Manola. We may experience, like intent does not always equal impact in terms of how we come across, especially across cultures. So I also think there's a grace component, right? Like we do our best knowing it's not going to be perfect. And as the receivers, we listen with grace and know that somebody's trying authentically and they may not be perfect, but we can still feel that level of support and empathy. So it's such an important topic right now.
Wonderful. Melissa.
Tracy, yes, thank you. Tracy, I was going to say, I'm so glad that you've captured all of this data in one place. And I really encourage everyone to be Googling when the session is over to read these. I know I will be. I got great traction internally by using that kind of data. That's how you make your case to include these kinds of concepts when you're framing up company values and leadership competencies. It's really key, particularly if you are dealing with some folks who are decision makers who may see kindness, empathy, and compassion as something separate from leadership and not really understanding the connections. You can help them make it so. The study that I came across that I thought was particularly interesting, and Tracy, I don't know if it's in your article or not, but I'll add it because I thought it was really fascinating. Women in the Workplace did a study and found that women left their jobs in record numbers last year. In absolute record numbers. And what's particularly fascinating to me about the study was that the first interpretation of the data was that it was because they were hitting the glass ceiling, and that's what motivated them to leave, right? A pre-pandemic interpretation of the data. And when they dug deeper, they found that women were leaving in droves in search of a more compassionate workplace. I thought that was really powerful, right? So we make certain assumptions that we've seen these behavior patterns all the time. We understand, no, they're leaving because they need a more compassionate workplace. And I think that part of this challenge that we have now is how we interpret situations and our perspective on things has changed. And so we're calculating, or we all have our own personal calculus, I think, of how we determine if something is worth it or not. And how we've decided that something is worth it has changed, right? And so showing kindness, compassion, and empathy in the workplace is a way to buffer against that. It's really kind of an insurance policy, right, for retention as well as for performance.
Yeah, I think also in the comments, thank you, audience. I see some good suggestions like, would people refer you, etc. I think that is indeed positive referral is a very good indication. Of course, you can look at engagement numbers. How do people feel about belonging in the organization, connection, etc. But still, there will be people that say, Those are not hard numbers. Those are soft numbers. I don't care. But I think reality is there's been quite a lot of research that the most successful companies are companies that are diverse and that are kind to their people, because you need a certain form of safety in order to take risks. And in today's world where so many things are changing, you need to innovate in order to survive. How can you innovate if you don't dare to take risk, if you're afraid to speak up, if you feel that you're not taken seriously or that you're not seen as a human but only as a machine? You will not give your best. I think if you really want to succeed as a company, your people need to be at their best. And then those core human qualities like kindness and compassion are the secret sauce. Without it, you're not going to innovate much and you're not going to go far.
Mm.
So many threads that I want to pull. But in terms of another metric that is interesting to look at when judging sort of the effectiveness of a positive, kind, empathetic culture is how are your employees using the benefits that you offer? If you are attempting to meet the needs of people through employee engagement groups, through flexible hours, through enrichment programs, taking a really hard look at the percentage of your employees who are able to use those things. If there's engagement programs, is it the same people over and over? Like you have this pocket of people that are getting reached, but a large portion of your workforce isn't. That's something that we're looking at is, in our programs that we're offering. Are we giving people a need? Have we listened and been curious about why those things? Are we offering them at the wrong times? Things like that. That's a number that we're looking at right now.
Mm. Well, we are quite a few minutes into the second half of our time together already. And I would just love to say welcome to people joining us a little bit later. You will find the recording on hackinghrlab.io in a little while. And the next question was inspired by some reflections I've had, and it comes with a very short story, just so I can explain the question better. When I look at kindness, compassion, and empathy, and I think about how when people tap into them, kindness is not so much sensitive to what I'm about to say, but I have a feeling that we think about compassion and empathy, and we are intentionally compassionate and empathetic when the times are hard. And when I realized this was just as my book came out a little bit over a month ago, I would get questions, normally people would ask, so how are you? And they would give you the space and grace to answer when they would ask, assuming that things are not necessarily good. As soon as my book came out, it was like, how are you? You must be over the moon happy. And there was almost no space and grace to say, well, I am happy, but that's not the only slice in my life. Now, my question is, how can we, irrespective of where we are in the hierarchy, and I love the fact that all of you decoupled leadership from hierarchy in your answers, but how can we be kind and empathetic and compassionate when we are not dealing with COVID, when we are not dealing with, problems that we know about, or when what we see would not necessarily prompt us to be automatically compassionate? How do we do that, irrespective of context and convenience?
Let me start. I think as a leader, you can't be everything for everybody. I think you need to be realistic that you're not a robot, you're not a superwoman or man. So there are limits to what you can do. because, what can you sense, hear, feel? What kind of energy do you have? Because also as a leader, you don't have endless energy. So I think you need to balance and be realistic, like when can I be at my best and when can other people at their best, and are there people that can help me or other ways? Because you always have some advocates in your group, or you have some people that really radiate energy. So use people around you as well, at times that you're not at your best or that you might not be able to sense it, because not every topic or not every person or not every situation might be when you are at your best. So be real and realistic about yourself, show some self-reflection, and use other people that are really kind and compassionate. And then I think it will be contagious. I think if there's an atmosphere of caring, of positivity, people will care more and be more considerate for each other as well.
It really starts with ourselves, right? Olga, being kind to yourself enables you to be kind to other people. I love that. I think it also is about being really intentional. How do you define leadership? What kind of leader do you wish to be? And as you enact that and try to be your best leader every day, and Olga, to your point, we're often not, right? We're imperfect human beings, but what is it that you strive for? And if kindness and compassion and empathy are part of that definition that you're striving for, then you will naturally embody those things as you move forward. So, for example, if you conceptualize being a great leader as being a coach or empathetic leadership, as you ask open-ended questions, you're naturally showing curiosity and validating people's perspectives and giving them the benefit of the doubt, which are all behaviors that are kind, right, and show empathy. So I think one of the challenges that we have, to your point, Olga, about being so many things, we keep trying to do so many things, and there's always the adding and the adding and adding, and we get, buckle under the weight of all of our aspirations. I think it's important to have one overarching umbrella as that North Star. What am I shooting for? How do I want people to experience me? And so for me, it was always a mirror test. My question to myself is, at the end of the day, if I go back and look in the mirror, can that person tell me that I did my best for my people, right? And I want to know, hopefully, that they're using good adjectives when they're discussing their day at the table. Then I know that was a win.
There are two things, Melissa, that you just said that I would love to double down on, because I think they're so key. One was sort of best intentions or assuming positive intent, like going into a situation with like the presumption that if a person's actions, they're trying to do good. And it becomes really clear if they're not, right? But assuming that people are trying to do good helps cut through a lot of issue. And the other thing is clarity, both seeking clarity and ensuring clarity in what you're saying. The kindness and empathy isn't always about, I think you said at the beginning, sugarcoating or things being very sweet. Sometimes it's being very direct and ensuring that the message that needs to be delivered is delivered and understood, and that a message that you need to receive is received and understood, and that clarity of communication is so essential. When sort of being empathetic, you have to know what's true for each other before you can have that empathy, that kindness, that compassion.
I would also add, I love your question, Manola, about like it's easy to check in when things are bad and when we can imagine they're really bad or really good or one extreme or the other on the continuum. And I think part of the skill of being able to check in no matter what is a skill of attention. Like we're so distracted and there's so much coming at us all the time. And I think when we create proximity with others, leaders, colleagues, and just are there for each other frequently enough that we notice differences, that's an opportunity to check in. And I think just being really, really intentional about tuning in, paying attention, asking questions, and clearing the way. Bree, you said earlier, I really like that. And then taking cues from people about how much they do want to share or don't want to share. The other thing I would say is I think it's really helpful when leaders kind of model the way, right? Even if we don't mean to be all that, we don't mean to be models. People tend to watch leaders and emphasize the choices and the behaviors that leaders are expressing, and they tend to put more of a spotlight on those. And so I think a lot of times leaders feel like they need to be Teflon, right? Like they're not sharing anything about themselves, but they're asking about others. And we need to find the right balance. We don't want to overshare. We want to be appropriate. We want to, take a clear leadership role. But also, I think when we can be real and authentic and model, hey, I'm willing to share where I'm at. Hey, I'm willing to be real with you. Hey, I'm willing to, talk about something in a way that is appropriate and authentic. That I think actually also helps kind of clear the path for others to be seen and to share themselves.
Yeah, I think Bree and Tracy have sort of summarized what I wanted to say. But just in brief, I wanted to just add that it's important to connect with people at the heart level rather than the head level. Because most of the time when the head level will just take as it is, and I'll connect with people or treat people based on how I am feeling at that time or what I'm going through at that time as a leader. And sometimes we fail to sort of draw that line so that I remove myself from how I'm feeling to be able to connect with, my team. But then when you're connecting at heart level, it's really about how are you really, feeling the person. Even just as Tracy said, that if you're connecting often, you will know when something is not right. Then you can really handle it and face it and probe further just to find out how really are you doing, so that we are not making the assumption that, now that you've, authored a book, it's out there, you're happy, you're on the moon 24 hours, seven days a week, but when we connect at the heart level, I can actually feel that, oh, there's something going on with Minola that maybe I need to check further. And then the other aspect is just creating those forums of conversations on and, more often as possible across units, with different teams, with the team. So it's not just waiting when there's a need, but we have this close collaboration and more touch points and conversations going on between us. And that creates that, that kindness. It fosters that collaborative atmosphere within the entire organization. And we are not just waiting for something to happen or just that 1 month touch point, but it's a continuous process to create it. Thank you.
I do want to acknowledge quite a lot of energy in the comments around the topic of accountability. So my next question comes in the form of how can we best combine kindness, compassion, empathy with accountability in a high-performing organization? And I would also like to put a secondary spin to this question inspired by what you just briefly touched on, especially in a context of hybrid and remote. Yeah, because Terry said about, the head and the heart, but in a Zoom box or a team box, we only see the head. Yeah. So how do we use kindness, empathy, compassion, and accountability to augment each other in a most meaningful way?
I think it really starts with a growth mindset, like an assumption that we can all get better, that we can all grow, that we can all develop. and an emphasis on feedback, right? Like when we give people feedback, that's actually a gift. It's actually us saying, I care enough about you that I'm going to give you some feedback for better or for worse, right? I'm going to give you some information about how you're coming across and what your impact is, whether that's brilliantly successful or whether I see places where you could improve. And sometimes that's just feedback about a thing that we did, right? A task or a responsibility. Sometimes it's feedback about our fit or our role or how we're impacting other people. But I think we start with, gosh, I care enough about you to be tuned in. I care enough about you to give you feedback. I care enough about you to take time and, give attention to the space that we're going to be in together. And then assume that we can all grow and all develop from there and hold people accountable. A lot of times, I mean, we say this all the time, but it's so true, right? A lot of times, if we're in a situation that's not a great fit, it's such a relief to get feedback in order to move to a situation that might be a better fit. And I actually think when we hold people accountable, it sends a message that we value them. Like, I'm going to hold you accountable because I value your deliverable. I value your brain. I value your participation. I value you showing up and giving your best because it brings value to the group. And I think we can remote and hybrid wise stay in touch with each other, create space for chatting, even if it's not task oriented, really reach out and be intentional about how we support each other, even if it's from a distance. Keep our cameras on so we can kind of see each other and check in together when that's appropriate. So those are some of the things that come to mind for me.
I'm so glad you brought up feedback, because at the end of the day, I think that fundamentally there's this impression that being nice and holding people accountable are mutually exclusive, right? And they're not. They are one and the same when they're done well together, because to Tracy's point, feedback has to come from a genuine place of care and kindness for the person to want to take it on board. So I would submit that it's actually risky to seek accountability without kindness, compassion, and empathy. Because if you don't know where that person is, if you don't understand how they're experiencing the workplace and the tasks at hand, then giving them feedback about it is likely to fall on deaf ears. It's only when they genuinely feel that you understand them and that you value their contributions and that you have their best interest at heart that they will then take your feedback on board. So I think they're one and the same.
Yes, go ahead, Olga.
Sorry. Yeah, I liked also the comment about, videos on in a way, because, going back to the hybrid work, I agree, right? A box is only a part of a person and you don't see the whole body. On the other hand, I know that a lot of people struggle with the camera, right? They really get tired. It really drains on them. And especially if you work in a global environment, like many of us do, you have people at 6 a.m. where you might not be at your best, or at 11 p.m. where you might not be at your best. So I think for me, the kind thing is to ask every individual, what is your preference? Is it draining for you to have the camera on, or is it okay? Are there certain times of the day or certain days of the weeks that are really not working with you to be camera ready? Or give them an upfront warning like, hey, this meeting will be camera on because, and explain why it is. I think it is important to ask people, ask about, also about feedback. Do you like it direct and to the point, or do you like me to give the whole context and examples? Because there are cultural differences, right? In some cultures like mine in the Netherlands, we are super direct, and for us it's kind of a sign that we care. Because if we wouldn't care, we would say whatever, but the fact that we not disagree and that we are very direct about it is a sign of passion. But in another culture that might be completely different. So I don't think you can assume anything. So whatever is wording to you, are you an introvert, are you an extrovert, what kind of culture, and what is your personal preference? And you might not be able to cater for all, but at least acknowledge like, hey, this is going to be a big group, it might be difficult for some of the introverts, but could you do this? Or this is, something that might be very difficult for people that where it's very early or very late. What could we do? So ask, don't assume, ask, and try to rotate a bit so that the different people with the different preferences are not always the one that have to be on camera or have to be late or early.
Wonderful. Terry.
Thank you. Just to add, I think we can also engage collaborative tools, digital tools that could help connect the workplace because, as Olga said, people are in different time zones. They are working, they work better at different times. And so just finding together with the team what works best, then providing that platform that people can give feedback, for example, on an assignment, you can get input across board, you can give feedback across board, and then just incorporating coaching as leaders. And that's one of the things we have tried to do. We have done at Village Enterprise, really have leaders coach their teams rather than just lead or manage the work, but provide coaching and support to the team, giving feedback, having very clear goals, and just providing the team with the tools to be able to have their voice heard. That's very important. Thank you.
I love the collaborative tools, Terry. That's exactly where my head was at as well, because I think there's the clarity of goals, there's the clarity and transparency of how people are meeting their goals. Sharing how they're doing their work, their tasks, and not because of like, ha, gotcha. It's more like, I've got you. I see where you need support because like your path is not clear or you're behind. We need to leverage, my strength, your strength, the team, all of those things. I think, especially in a hybrid remote environment, is that clarity of how people are working. And how they're planning their work and how they can plan to work together. And it is the most kind thing to say, you need more. You need more of us. You need more time. You need more skill. We're going to invest in you. We're going to support you. And that can only happen if the goal is clear and the way people are working towards it is also shared.
I oftentimes say that serendipity is how the universe gives us a hug. And it was yesterday I wrote a post about contracting confrontational bandwidth and how we not intentionally or often enough or clearly enough ask our stakeholders, how do you want me to disagree with you? How can we most meaningfully engage in disagreements? And, everybody seems to rave about the love languages, but I'm like, how about what are our conflict languages? How do we go into confrontation in such a way that we will not drag along frustration and anxiety and mistrust? And I do believe that there is a lot of kindness and compassion and empathy in clearly contracting confrontational bandwidth. Yeah. So it is very painful to say we are 3 minutes away from saying goodbye. So my question that I think will become my signature wrap-up question, I'm still thinking about it, is what is one thing that you learned about kindness, empathy, and compassion in the workplace that you wish someone had told you about? There's this wonderful book I'm under, still under its spell. It's called Why Has Nobody Told Me This Before? And I very warmly recommend it, not just in October, the Wellbeing and Mental Health Month, but it's a all seasons reading. So what has nobody told you before about kindness, empathy, and compassion? And Melissa, are you good to go clockwise for a wrap-up?
I am.
Perfect.
I am. Thank you. The first thing that came to mind is that one size does not fit all. right? And so if you really want to motivate your people, if you see yourself as a creative person, this is a wonderful opportunity to dive in and to figure out what's going to really move the needle for that person. What's really going to make them feel that you are expressing these kinds of behaviors.
Wonderful. So one size doesn't fit all. Olga.
I think kindness is a super strength. So don't see it as something soft. It is actually a power skill to have.
Wonderful. Tracy.
I think the importance of authenticity and tuning in.
Wonderful. Teddy.
As a leader, you don't have all the answers. And it's okay to also need kindness.
I also hear quite a lot of self-kindness and self-compassion there. Thank you. Bree.
I think, double tapping on what Olga said, that the kindness, the most powerful leadership skill that you can have is to be that kind, compassionate, and understanding leader, and still be able to thrive in business with those skills. I think that knocks people's socks off.
This was absolutely unbelievable. So thank you, Melissa, Olga, Tracy, Terry, and Bree, for so graciously and generously being here today. Thank you, everybody, for taking the time and the curiosity to join us. Also, wholehearted gratitude to Enrique and Jessa for making this happen. Such a timely conversation. Only 20 seconds just to recommend a book to you all. It's called Deep Kindness. And that's where I learned about common kindness, which is the pleasantries, the thank yous, the please. Then there is confetti kindness. That is kindness that comes easy. And then there is deep kindness that comes from deep inner work. And you do it because that's who you are. And it takes also a lot of resilience because you do it in spite of being misreceived many times. Thank you so very much, everyone. And I am looking forward to welcome you to our conversation tomorrow. Have a kind time moving forward. Thank you. Oh, we're back.
Looking for how to close.